The death penalty, also known as capital punishment, is the most severe sentence a government can impose on an individual. It is the state-sanctioned practice of executing a person as a punishment for a crime they have been convicted of committing. This is not a new concept. For centuries, societies around the world have used execution as a way to punish offenders and deter others from similar actions. The methods have changed over time: public hangings, beheadings, lethal injection, the electric chair. The core idea, however, remains the same. The state takes the life of a person as a final and irreversible form of justice. The debate surrounding capital punishment is one of the most contentious in any legal system. Supporters often argue that it provides a just retribution for heinous crimes, an eye for an eye. They believe it can also act as a powerful deterrent. Furthermore, some proponents claim it ensures dangerous criminals can never harm society again. It's a conversation about justice, safety, what a society deems an appropriate response to the worst violations of its laws. In Iran, the legal system is deeply intertwined with Islamic law, specifically the Shia interpretation. This means certain religious offenses can carry the most severe penalties, including death. One such crime is Sab al-Nabi, insulting the Prophet Muhammad. This isn't just a differing opinion. The law treats it as blasphemy and an attack on the faith's foundations. People can be accused for making derogatory remarks, creating art, publishing writings deemed offensive. Offenses aimed at the Prophet, his family, or other revered religious figures can trigger the charge. Another serious crime is apostasy, or irtidad. That's when someone born into or converted to Islam renounces the faith. The law sees this as a betrayal of God and the community. For example, if someone raised Muslim publicly declares they are an atheist, converts to Christianity, or joins the Baha'i faith, they could face apostasy charges. The Baha'i faith is treated as heresy, and its followers have faced persecution. Apostasy is about the public act of leaving Islam, not private belief seen as a threat to religious and social order. These laws contrast with legal principles in Europe and North America. Beyond religious offenses, Iran's legal code reserves the death penalty for crimes labeled threats to national security. One of the most serious is moharebe, waging war against God. In practice, it's applied to people who take up arms or join armed opposition groups. Members of groups the government labels terrorist. Certain Kurdish separatist movements, the People's Mujahideen of Iran. Such people can be charged with moharebe for alleged violent activity. It equates political opposition with war on divine and state authority. Another grave offense, efsadi fil arts, corruption on earth. It's a broad, vague charge covering actions that undermine social order, organizing large-scale protests, espionage, collaborating with hostile foreign governments. During widespread protests in 2022 and in 2023, several protesters were executed after convictions for efsad fil arts. In Iran, the crime of murder is governed by a legal principle known as Qisas. Qisas translates to retribution in kind, retributive justice derived from Islamic law. Often summarized as an eye for an eye, when a person is convicted of intentional murder, the victim's family is given the right to decide the perpetrator's fate. They can demand the execution, they can forgive the offender, they can accept diya, blood money. Diya is negotiated between families. Accepting diya commutes the death sentence. The offender typically serves prison time instead. This is different from legal systems in America and in Europe. In the West, murder is treated as a crime against the state. One of the primary drivers of Iran's high execution rate is its, really stringent anti-drug laws. The country's geographic location, bordering Afghanistan, the world's largest opium producer, places it on a major transit route for narcotics heading to Europe and other parts of the world. In response, the government has waged a long and deadly war on drugs, implementing some of the harshest drug trafficking laws on the planet. For many years, possession or trafficking of relatively small amounts of illegal substances could result in a mandatory death sentence. For example, being caught with just 30 grams of heroin or cocaine was enough to trigger capital punishment. These laws have led to the execution of thousands of people over the past few decades. The majority of those executed are often not cartel kingpins, but low-level couriers, many from impoverished and marginalized backgrounds. They are often driven by economic desperation, taking immense risks for what seems like a large payoff. Human rights groups have documented cases of individuals being sentenced to death based on confessions obtained under duress and without adequate legal representation. In 2017, Iran raised thresholds for mandatory death sentences, a reform that led to a noticeable drop, though trafficking remains a capital offense. Section 6. Morality and the Law. Offenses against public decency. Iran's legal code prescribes the death penalty for certain acts considered severe offenses against Islamic morality and public decency. Among these are specific sexual offenses, treated with extreme severity. For instance, zina, adultery, sexual intercourse between people not married to each other. Zina can be a capital crime under certain circumstances. The punishment is particularly severe if the person is married. The law also mandates the death penalty for rape. Zina bil onf. Convicted rapists can face execution. These laws are rooted in strict interpretations of religious texts regulating personal conduct. Homosexuality is criminalized and can be punishable by death. Under Iranian law, consensual same-sex relations between men, lavat, treated as a capital crime. Specific punishments can vary by circumstances and judge. Execution remains a legal possibility. Documented executions for homosexuality are not always transparently reported, often masked by other charges such as rape or assault. Regardless, the law creates extreme fear and persecution for LGBTQ+ people and drives communities underground, making them vulnerable to blackmail and persecution. Section 7. Global Contrast. Iran versus Western legal systems. The differences are vast and affect every part of the law. The most fundamental divergence is the scope of capital crimes. United States, capital punishment is rare, reserved mainly for aggravated murder. Europe, death penalty abolished. It's a condition for EU membership. Iran, death penalty applied broadly, including drug trafficking, political dissent, blasphemy, adultery, homosexuality. Crimes that would never be capital in the West. Western systems emphasize due process, fair public trial, right to a competent lawyer, right to appeal, high standard of proof, beyond a reasonable doubt. In Iran, these protections are often lacking. Revolutionary courts, summary trials behind closed doors, defendants denied lawyers of their choosing, convictions tied to confessions allegedly extracted by torture or coercion. International law prohibits executing under 18 SA, yet Iran continues to sentence juveniles to death, drawing condemnation. Section 8. The Human Cost. Statistics and Stories. The statistics on capital punishment in Iran paint a grim picture. Iran ranks among the countries with the highest number of executions, second only to China. According to Amnesty International and other human rights groups, Iran regularly executes hundreds of people each year. In some years the count exceeded 500 or even 800. A large portion were for drug-related offenses. Behind the numbers are real human stories. One is Rayhana Jabari. She was executed in 2014 after conviction for killing a former intelligence official. Jabari maintained he tried to sexually assault her and she acted in self-defense. Her case sparked international outcry over a flawed investigation. Public executions, though less common, still happen. People gather to watch, sometimes children among them. Convicts can be hanged from a crane, shown at a distance, non-graphic. The state argues this is a powerful deterrent. Human rights groups call it brutal and dehumanizing. The impact reaches far beyond those executed, leaving lasting trauma on families and communities. Section 9. A Final Reflection. The Weight of the Law. In summary, the application of the death penalty in Iran is a complex and deeply troubling issue, shaped by a unique blend of religious law, national security concerns, and cultural norms. We have seen that the scope of capital crimes is extraordinarily broad, extending far beyond the act of murder. From insulting the prophet, renouncing one's faith, political protest, drug trafficking, the list of offenses punishable by death is extensive. This legal framework creates an environment where the ultimate price can be exacted for actions many other societies would not even consider criminal. The legal process itself often falls short of international standards for a fair trial, particularly in revolutionary courts. The principle of Qisas places the life of a convicted murderer in the hands of the victim's family, introducing a deeply personal and often volatile element. That choice causes divisions and prolonged suffering. These practices stand in stark contrast to Western legal traditions which emphasize due process, narrow definitions of capital crimes, and the state's sole authority over punishment. The weight of these laws is borne by thousands and their families, creating a cycle of fear and trauma. Understanding the death penalty in Iran is not merely an academic exercise, it is a window into how a nation defines justice, protects its authority and enforces its moral code.